Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso at thewatchbox.com, your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. It's in the description below. Reach out to tmosso at thewatchbox.com. Today, we have another variant of the 2020 Rolex Submariner. This is the Oyster Perpetual Submariner 126613LB-0002. It is yellow gold and stainless steel, and we're going to do a quick sizing comparison. First, the bare measurements. As I measure this watch, of course, it is the 41 millimeters that Rolex claims in diameter, but it's difficult to measure it more than 0.7 millimeters larger than the old 40. It may be a 41, but I'm having trouble locating where that dimension is. It feels the same size. At 12.7 millimeters, it literally is the same size as a previous generation sub that I measured against this example. From lug to lug, again, it's identical, 48.1 millimeters from lug to lug. The only real difference is when you measure it end link to end link, and this watch measures out to a beefier 51.3 compared to the previous, are you ready for this? 50.5. We are talking incredibly small increments. It is a 21 millimeter lug spacing, which is broader than the 20 millimeter before. That's the size of the insert between the lugs. And really the only externally obvious signature of the new case, and I'm going to bring in the previous generation watch here, is that the lug profiles on the new case are much thinner than the original super case. And you can really see that to good advantage here. It's visibly different. Everything else, though, is almost exactly the same, and you can see that to good advantage. The lug-to-lug span is the same. The thickness is the same. Even end-link to end-link, we're talking fractions of a millimeter. It is not going to grow beyond your wrist if you own the previous watch. You're still well within the range. Throwing it on my own 16 centimeter circumference wrist, you can see the watch wears comfortably. It's big, it's flat, it's flush, and like all the Oyster cases, it seems a bit more like a cushion case in profile than a round case. 12.7 millimeters thick means it still slides underneath your cuff. It's still appropriate as a dress watch. It is broader across the wrist, but not in a way that's going to change the equation. If you're wearing the previous watch, you can wear this one. I'd say it's probably suitable for a wrist between 13.5 and 14 centimeters in circumference. Taking a quick look at the bracelet, again, not a whole lot of changes here. The big change is the profile where it joins the lug, and of course it's going to be a broader end link, so the taper is going to start from a broader point. But it's the Oyster bracelet, 3-link design, satin finished shoulders, staggered link alignment, yellow gold centers, polished outer faces, of course removable links as ever, fixed by screws. The clasp is, of course, finished internally. This is a flagship watch for Rolex, and it features a double locking system. There's the well-known, let's get that out of the way, there's the well-known clamshell, but then there's also a lift lock system, and you can see it notches closed, the beak and a hook that interlock, so it's a double locking system with a little bit of a kerf underneath the Rolex crown so you can dig your nail in. Now this is the glide lock clasp, so you still have that 20 millimeters of adjustment in 2 millimeter increments, and you have the ability to size in or out, and this can be used for precision if you're just sizing it up. It can also be pulled out all the way for use over a dry suit or a wetsuit or just a thick winter coat, and of course you have those intermediate size links in there too. So 3 different ways to size this one: intermediate, standard links, and then you've got glide lock. Rolling back to the case, not a whole lot has changed in profile. It's still a super case of sorts. Let's call it a super case Mark II. It's sheer on its side and mirror polished. And then the lug hoods are satin finished, but the lugs themselves are skinnier in profile. They do look a bit more tapered. It's a triplock crown as ever in gold, you know, because the center dot is larger than the flanking dots. 300 meters water resistant screw down crown that doesn't change, nor does the 120 click bezel. Let's have a listen. It's still quite precise and simply exudes quality. You can feel that this is one of the best calibrated clicks in the dive bezel business. Sapphire capped pearl, line it up with the minute hand, which is yellow gold, and you've got that impromptu 0 to 60 minute count up timer. The bezel is gold, the links are gold, the crown is gold, and then the insert itself is blue ceramic for scratch resistance. Of course, we are in the era of the metallic dial. Long gone are the days of the matching blue insert and dial on the two-tone watch. The timepiece, of course, does feature inserts that are deposits within the bezel. These are actually just vapor deposits that create the indices as well as the numerals. And then the dial is a metallic sunburst with yellow gold indices and hands. You can see the little crown between Swiss and made, a post-2018 signature of any new model Rolex. You'll also appreciate the fact that functionally not much has changed as you unscrew the crown and you activate the hacking seconds function, or you activate the quick set system for the date, which is functionally identical. The timepiece, of course, does feature a Rolex movement, no longer the caliber 3135, it's the 3235 inside. Big changes. 48-hour power reserve becomes 70. The traditional Swiss lever gets replaced by a modified Liga-etched Swiss lever that Rolex calls Chronergy, helping to extend the power reserve. Thinner mainspring barrel wall, a larger mainspring barrel helping to beef up the power reserve. It's still a 4 Hz beat rate. It's still a bidirectional winder. It's still 31 joules. It's still a COSC certified Swiss chronometer. And yes, Rolex still guarantees it to run no worse than -2 + 2 seconds a day from the factory or better. One change, in addition to the power reserve, is that Rolex now uses a bearing system for the winding rotor rather than a jeweled staff, which makes it more shock tolerant. And Rolex also adapted its Rolex Paraflex shock protection system to replace the long-running KIF shock protection system. There's a full balance bridge and a free-sprung balance for shock resistance. The hairspring itself is a handmade Breguet overcoil, the better to help it pass that COSC test and keep excellent time in any position. And the alloy of the hairspring is a blue oxidized niobium zirconium that's highly anti-magnetic. Rolex calls it Parachrome Blue. Other than that, the timepiece inside and out will be familiar to fans of the current generation, or I should say late generation, 6-digit Submariner. The timepiece still wears well and remains the standard in its class. Email tmosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details. Rolex Chromolite Blue on the 2020 two-tone Submariner.